Hey everyone, Joe here, sitting in our screen used Knight Rider car, one of two that we own, as you know. Wanted to talk to you today about pod units, and show you a piece that we've had in our collection for quite a number of years now. We did a short video on this on the channel a long time ago, but we thought we'd kind of revisit it. So as you know, these are the pods on the car. I'm not sure how well you can see them, but in our screen used car, you'll notice the pods are gone right now. We are upgrading them. So those will be back in soon. But I wanted to talk to you about this. This is an original pod unit from an original mold made at Universal Studios in 1983. This pod was in the display car that they had at the theme park, the first display car, which was a replica. It was a non-screen used car. Our screen used car ended up being used on that display much later in 1988, but we're talking way back 1983 now. And this pod was part of the initial display when the car premiered over its over the water. I'm sure you guys are familiar with this, but those of you who aren't, at Universal Studios Hollywood in their theme park, they placed a replica Knight Rider car over a pond with a little bridge, and people could walk over to the car, sit in it, and have a conversation with KITT. There was an attendant, an actor pretending to be KITT, kind of off camera, and he would talk and have a conversation. Anyways, I'm sure most of you guys know that or have seen that. But when the display was initially launched in November of '83, the car was built to look like what KITT looked like at that time, which was the Season 2 style dashboard with the smaller two TVs, you know. And this was the pod that was in it. Now, this pod was actually in the car for less than a year, because what happened was all of the tourists getting in and out kept hitting the pod arms, these long pod arms. And eventually it cracked, and it got to the point where this needed replaced. So what they did was they actually cut this off. They took a saw and cut this pod off, and then they grafted on a pod from the 3rd and 4th season mold, which was different. The place where the buttons go is a little wider, and the shape's just slightly different. But so if you look starting in about 1985, that display car still had its Season 2 dash, but actually had Season 3 pods. Because think about it, the show was already in production. You know, Season 3 started in '84. So by that time, they already had the molds for the Season 3 parts. So all they did was they cast a Season 3 pod and put it in the car. All right, you get it. But anyways, I want to tell you a little bit about this piece. We got it at auction. Well, it went unsold at auction back in 2010 or 2011, I think. It went unsold. I ended up contacting the auction house. This was like a year after. I didn't see the auction till a year after, but I saw it went unsold. So I contacted the auction house. They put me in contact with the person that owned this, who happened to be one of the many former Universal Studios employees who worked at the park and lent their voice to KITT for the park. And so they got me in touch with him, and I ended up purchasing this. It also came with a whole bunch of other buttons, and it came with, it didn't come with the steering wheel, but there's some pictures from that display where you see the center of the steering wheel, like right here, had a plastic plate, and the letter K was drilled in it. Basically, it was supposed to be a speaker, you know, so the people in the car could talk, and the attendant could hear what they were saying. There was a speaker right in the steering wheel, and there was a K that was drilled out. And this guy, for some bizarre reason, saved that piece, so we have that as well. But yeah, he saved this pod. And what's interesting is these arms are filled with epoxy, with resin. So they're pretty, it's a pretty firm piece. The center section is all hollow and empty, but the arms are completely solid. These are not real buttons, and there's no way to even run wires to them. So what they did was they took the actual, these are actual buttons. These are the actual same model buttons that were used in the screen-used Hero car. But what they did was they cut off all of the pins on the back and glued these all together, and then just glued it onto the pods themselves. The buttons no longer press. They actually glued all the buttons down too, to help, minimize all the people getting in here and hitting the buttons, and then they break off, things like that. So they glued all the buttons down. Unfortunately, we are missing the buttons for this side, but these are the original buttons. You can see here, most of them still have their original stickers. Some of them are familiar to the show, but other ones we have THDD instead of HTDD for high traction drop down. So that's a little different. There was never any black buttons, but this is all consistent with what was in that tour car at the time. So there's also a little bit of where you can see some indents in the middle from where the steering wheel was, and some paint indents and things like that. But yeah, this is an original piece from that first display car. So there you go. Pretty cool, huh? All right, guys. As always, thanks for watching. Appreciate your time. We'll see you next time.
And now, while we listen to Joe's selection of Knight Rider music that we received directly from Don Peake himself, we'd like to thank these Patreon supporters. Look at you guys scrolling up the screen to my right. Wait a minute, how can you tell which side is my right, since you can't see me because I'm not on camera? Oh well, you know what I mean. We're featuring these fine supporters at our Knight Rider Prop Restorer level. Thank you very much for your support. And for those of you at the Knight Rider History Hunter level, we're recognizing you right now in the description. Now, if you enjoyed seeing this golden nugget of Knight Rider history being rescued from obscurity, then please consider supporting us on Patreon. Your support would empower us to bring you even more of these historical nuggets. We are the Knight Rider Historians. Till next time, take care, everybody. Bye-bye.